Hi everybody, welcome to the show. As you can see, as you saw just a split second ago, right when I flipped over from the main title screen, before it clicked back over to me. My guest, of course, is the wonderful Jessie Gender, and we are here tonight to talk about Star Trek for your entertainment and amusement. And you bloodthirsty.
we're gonna attack each other. It'll be vicious. We'll tear each other apart.
I've been getting comments on my Picard reviews ever since I really for probably about episode 3 or 4 of season 2 when I was just like, okay, this is pretty bad. And people
Yeah,
were like, you should do a video with Jessie and you two should have a fight over it or a debate or something. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have a debate with somebody about a
yeah.
TV show. Like we could, but we're going to talk about it because now that Picard is completely finished for the season, and Strange New Worlds just started, we can talk about all of that.
All the Trek. Yeah, yeah.
But first, how are you?
I'm doing good. Like I was telling you before we got started, I just finished exporting my Star Trek Picard review, so I'm doing that. Otherwise, I'm excited. I'm going to see Doctor Strange tonight, which is going to be fun.
Ooh, I hope you enjoy that. I'm still on the fence about going to a theater to see it. I would like to see it, but I don't know if I'm gonna go to a theater to see it. But
I'm lucky in that where I live, there are 2 theaters. There's the one the really nice theater, and then there's the college student cheap theater that no one goes to. So I can go to that one, and it's just me in the middle of an entire theater by myself. I feel bad because the theater probably can't get that much money compared to the AMC, but it's I appreciate it. Get the whole theater to myself.
Absolutely. So. That's like how when I've gone to see 2 movies in the theater since COVID started, and they were both last year and this year. So I went to see SpiderMan, and that was the theater was pretty packed. And then I went to see Batman, and for whatever reason, I went to see both early morning shows on opening day. So I was hoping there wouldn't be a bigger crowd. Spider-Man, there was still a pretty big crowd. Batman, I got lucky. The theater, there were a lot of people, but there was enough room that everybody could kind of spread out. The theater was maybe a little less than half full. So I got to get my seat way in the back, and everybody was farther away from me, and I felt okay about it, But yes, I don't know if I really want to see Doctor Strange because I really like the first one.
I'm excited for Picard to show up in that one. I mean, that's the
as Picard. That's the big shock.
It's multiverse, right? Yeah, that's the twist. It's not he's playing Professor X. He's playing.
Everybody
Picard.
thinks he's just going to be Professor X, and it's going to actually be Picard beaming in, going, "Oh, I have something to say."
Exactly.
Let me tell you about my mother.
Yeah, it's oh God. Just have a long flashback sequence in the middle of it where he's just talking about his mom.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, I will get into a bunch of that, but we both have thoughts, I'm sure.
No.
But
how are you? You asked me.
I am very well. I shot a video for Monday that's pretty much completely done, and I wrote my video for Wednesday next week is going to be another Star Trek video. It'll be my video about Keiko, actually. Keiko O'Brien.
Yeah.
That is written, and I'm shooting it tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to working on that.
Nice.
And otherwise, just in terms of general life, things are good.
Good.
It's been raining here all day, but I haven't had to go anywhere, so that's completely fine with me. And there was a rabbit in my backyard all morning. And every time I would walk by one of my back windows, I would look out, and for 4 hours, he was still there. Well, no, he's feasting, treating himself to a feast of grass. Every time I see him, he'd be in a slightly different spot and just no, just
Lovely.
So that was my, in addition to TV that I was watching and work that I was doing, my morning entertainment was checking in on the rabbit, watching the bunny. Yep.
Yeah. The worrisome part would be if more and more kept showing up, and they're all just staring at your window. And
I know, and and at first it's 2 or 3, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. There's bunnies in the backyard, and then you come back and there's 30.
Yeah, and they're all in a line.
They're all staring at the house. I'm like, wait a minute.
This isn't good. Oh God.
This there's something going on here. I'm not sure what I've done, but I've done something to piss these rabbits off.
They're all Picard season 2 fans as well.
Yeah, we watched your video, asshole. It's not poorly paced, it's decompressed. Okay. Okay.
It's better in a binge. It's better in a binge.
It's better if you watch it all at once. Like us. But speaking of Picard, now that the second season is completely done and we can look at it in totality, just before we get into individual like episodes or things, specific things that we liked or didn't like about it or whatever, just overall big picture, what was your feeling about the season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I'm too far off from you. Maybe less overtly like the way you put it in your reviews, like it's the worst ever. But I think we agree pretty much on most of the notes. I do think it was the messiest season of definitely this modern era of Star Trek, and it's probably my least favorite season of this, like since like Discovery started. Right. My least favorite season. I do think there are a few kernels of things to love in there that I liked personally, like specifically the Gerardi and Borg storyline. I actually really enjoyed, just generally. But overall, I think that I think it's really just a messy season that just kept meandering and going about in circles, and could have maybe been a nice tight 2-hour story if they really honed it in and like found something concise to say. But as it is, it just sort of meanders and wanders about and doesn't really say anything of particular conciseness or import. So.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty much agree on that. I mean, it is it's certainly my least favorite season of the current era of shows. And I know some people have, because I've said a couple times now, I think it's the worst single season of any Star Trek show that I've ever seen. And some people have said, well, what about season one of TNG? And I was like, well, they were the defending champion for sure. I mean, like that was definitely the worst single season. And people bring up like, well, what about, season one of TNG has Code of Honor, which is just a reprehensible episode. And, season one of TNG has like a couple of really like creative low points of the franchise, like, Angel One and Justice and, like bad episodes. But like the Picard was like one really bad episode stretched out over an entire season.
Yeah. So it's hard to compare the two because it's like they're both attempting different things. It's why when people compare like old Trek and new Trek, it's like it's kind of apples and oranges to a degree in the sense that like they're both attempting different things. So season one of TNG, like I think Code of Honor, if like an individual episode, is way worse than anything Trek has ever produced, even this season of Picard. But then if you're comparing like a whole season, there are episodes in season one of TNG like data lore and stuff that like are good generally. So it's like it's hard to compare the two, but yeah,
it is. I mean, you're right. I would definitely also say that Code of Honor is still by far the worst single episode of any Star Trek show I've ever seen, for all kinds of reasons, not just because it's just a bad story, badly told, but then you have like the racial stuff and like there's all kinds of,
what will make the aliens this episode? Let's make them black people. It's fine.
Yeah, stereotypical.
That's okay. That's all right, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a rotten episode, and I hope it stays the worst episode of Star Trek, because I would hate to see them make something worse than that at this point. But like. But like you said, and there's also, I've always thought Skin of Evil was a really good episode and kind of a turning point for the series. We'll Always Have Paris is a good episode. You mentioned Data Lore is a good episode. Like, yeah, there are some, if not like series highlights, at least really solid episodes in season one. And when I look back over this just completed season of Picard, it's like, I just don't see anything like that. I don't see a standout episode. I mean, I know some people, some folks who have commented on my stuff, even the ones who wound up more or less agreeing with me that it wasn't a good season, have said, well, the first 3 episodes are great. I just don't see that. I don't think the first 3 episodes are very good at all. I think the first 3 episodes would be like a great first act of one episode. Like that's my big problem with it. It's like you have the first 3 episodes and they did the same thing in season 1 of Picard too, where it's like, he's not even on the ship until the 3rd episode. And it's like, you guys you only have 10 episodes, right?
Yeah.
And he's not even on the ship yet. And with this season, it's like, it's a time travel story. They're going to travel back to the 21st century. It's going to be like time travel hijinks. Okay. When do they travel back in time? Oh, not till like the 20 minutes into the 3rd episode.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
we'll get there, but yeah, it's like see, I tend to agree with that point of view. Like, I do actually like the first three episodes, but I
Uh-huh.
like them as I watched them, and now in retrospect, seeing them as like that first act, I'm like, yeah, you're taking too long to get your setup. The reason I like the first, actually, even just the first two, like the third one, I could even be like, that third one's the one where like Rios falls flat in his face because the transporter
Oh,
messes up, and that's what like
yeah.
leads to, which is silly. But that's very, it's so contrived.
Oh my
But
God.
the
Yeah.
first two I like, because the first one at least is like, okay, it's setting up this up the status quo and giving us a lot of like the superficial like
Mhm.
criticisms of season one of Picard that I enjoyed. Like, look, we got all, you made fun of the copy paste fleet at the end of season one. Here's a whole bunch of nice ships for you to look at. I'm like, okay,
Right.
that's cool. We
Yeah.
get the Borg clitoris ship, which was cool to see.
They
I'm
easy
only
to find, which is
yeah,
nice. You just
yeah,
dispel that myth,
it's right there. I mean, so like a lot of that superficial stuff, it's like, okay, cool. And then episode two, I at least appreciated because I did enjoy the scene with John Delancey and Picard. I thought that was fun. Again, it doesn't go anywhere, so it ends up
Mhm.
being like this mystery box sort of scene, but I liked
Yeah.
the John Delancey's performance. And then I think it at least had them gave them a tangible goal in that episode of like, we need to get to the past. So they have a goal of like, this is the thing that we need to do, that is lacking from the entire rest of the season, where they're just like, all right, I guess we'll just wander around the past for a while. And
Yeah.
it's just like, it's just, as long as they have that one tangible goal in that episode, I at least appreciate the thrust of it. But then after that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'll mention a couple things that I did like about it. Although, kind of like the things you just talked about, I liked them at the time, and when I
Mm-hmm.
look back, I still like them in context, but it's just they don't wind up meaning anything,
Yep.
which is a flaw, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I really like not just like the idea of seeing different kinds of ships, because that's, I mean, I can take or leave that. I'm not like married to, I'm here for the ships. Like the ships are cool, but that's
Yeah.
I don't really
I
ultimately
agree.
that's
I mean, I like
you know
pretty ships. I got my ego moth
yeah
stuff, but yeah,
yeah like
it's
it's not yeah I, if yeah but so what I that's kind of what I was going to say, like I like the new Stargazer. Like
mhm.
just visually, in terms of the design, inside and outside, they're cool looking sets. The exterior, the model of the ship is neat. It's, you can tell that it's based on the old Stargazer that we saw that was Picard's ship, but it's been updated and redesigned. It's like a new class of ship based on that old class, kind of like how they've
Mhm.
done with the various versions of the Enterprise over the years. I thought it was neat. Like I thought it was cool. I liked it. Um, and
And I
then
like that
yeah,
that's like nostalgia, but not in a way that's like fan nostalgia bait that sometimes the rest of the season got into,
yeah.
where it's like, well, yeah, Stargaze is like a cool thing for Picard's past, but it's not something that a lot of us as like Trek fans are like super, super into. As like if you brought like the Enterprise back, it's like, oh, it's
Right.
showing a little bit of that nostalgia restraint while still tying into Picard's like aging as a character. So I thought that
Yeah.
was like a good choice. So
And it lets them do something like that, and without having it be, since it's not the Enterprise, it kind of gets you a little bit further away from that idea that the Enterprise is the center of the universe,
mm-hmm,
which
mm-hmm,
I think Star Trek, as much as I love the Enterprise,
mm-hmm.
all the various versions of the Enterprise, I think the Enterprise is a cool ship in many of its different versions, but like they kind of, get into this trap of like, well, everything important happens on the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is the most important ship ever. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you guys, you've established that you have like hundreds of other ships like flying around
It's
doing
go down.
basically the same thing as the Enterprise, and I guess nothing interesting ever happens to them, but
Mm-hmm.
you know but so I like that. I like the fact, one of the first things I noticed actually when I watched the first episode of this season, I like that some time has passed since the end of the last season. And that was something I
Mm-hmm.
liked about this most recent season of Discovery too, that it didn't
Yeah.
pick up right where the previous season left off. Some time had passed. So with Picard, the characters are in different places. You see Rios is back in Starfleet. You see Seven is now in command of La Serena. You see that Raffi is back in Starfleet. Picard is doing his thing with the Academy. Elnor is a cadet. Gerardi and Soji are off doing their own. Like the characters have kind
Mm-hmm.
of gone their separate ways, and they're in
I
a
didn't go
little bit
back.
of a different place now. And you know that, inevitably they're going to have to come back together for the story to happen, but they start out in different places. And I think I like that. It feels fresh. It feels like, okay, they're not just gonna pick up doing more of what they did last time. This is new. This is different. They're, you know, they're on the cusp of a new adventure. So I like that. Again, doesn't really maintain that for the series, for the show, well, for the season, but it's a nice starting point.
Yeah,
you know.
I will say, speaking on that too, like I don't know if you listened to it, but the best thing about the season of Picard so far, I think, is actually nothing to do with the season itself, but they released before the season came out an audio drama with Jerry Ryan and
Michelle
Hurd, and it's actually really, really good because it's just like a little mini adventure where they go off and like have fun, and it's actually really, like, legitimately the best part of this season was that audio drama. So I'd recommend it if you haven't listened to it.
I know of its existence. I haven't listened to it yet, but I mean, honestly, any kind of, you know, relatively coherent, self-contained story.
It's just like, it's like a little episode of the show that that just tells its own story. It's like basically an episodic version of what Picard could have been if it had been episodic. And I like that. It's like, oh, a beginning and ending story in an hour. Like,
how about that? One episode's worth of story told in one episode. That's amazing. Who would have thought? Like that was that, and that's one of the things that has been the most frustrating for me about the show is that, in theory, I like all of these characters. You know, like the new ones and the legacy ones, like Picard and Seven. Like I like all of these characters, and I like these versions of these characters. I know, like, some people who really have disliked the show from the beginning, you know, they haven't liked where the way it portrays Picard, or they haven't liked the way it portrays Seven of Nine. I think especially the way they introduced Seven in season 1 and the very different place in her life that we find her in. I thought that was one of their best choices, you know, to not do the thing where, oh, she's in Starfleet and she's serving on some ships. I'm like, no, she's in a completely different place. And, you know, because, like, it's been 20 years. Why have her be in some, like, there were people who complained about it and said, well, Picard should be the commander-in-chief of Starfleet.
Like, that's everyone's always choice. Like, not everyone's trajectory is to be captain or the head of everything eventually.
That's so boring. Like, if you're going to pick up on a character after we haven't seen them for 20 years, you know, they don't need to have a slightly different version of the job they had when we saw them the last time. Like, my problem was, so I have the opposite problems with both season 1 and season 2 of Picard. Okay.
Season 1 of Picard, my problem was I think it had too many great ideas and it didn't know how to shove them all into one season, and ended up not doing them well enough. So I loved Seven's arc last season, where it was she was starting to like come to accept her Borg half, which is kind of reiterated this season too. But last season was like she has to become the Borg queen, and for a moment, and like the fear of like succumbing to all of her Borg side in that moment. But then that episode's just sort of like, no, just forget about it and it'll be fine because we need to get on to other stuff. It's like she forgets it at the end of the episode and there's no consequences for it. And so my problem with last season is just there's like, I love almost all of their ideas. Like the synth ban makes perfect sense that they would have a prejudice based off of a terrorist attack, based off of all the prejudice that we see for synths throughout Next Generation and into Voyager even. And then that getting played out in a terrorist attack. And it read very much like a 9/11, like anti-Muslim sort of feeling that sort of came out in that season, but then it gets kind of casually tossed away at the end of the episode. It's like, oh yeah, we know you just almost tried to, like, you since just tried to almost genocide us with your weird space tentacle octopus people, but we'll get rid of that ban in a day. It's fine. It's no big deal. We rescinded that. It's okay. I'm like,
it's good.
No, that was interesting. But then this season, my problem was just sort of been, instead of it being too many ideas with not enough time, this is too few ideas over too much time. I think is my converse on it.
And I would agree with that. I think I even said at the time after season 1 of Picard came out, one of my big problems with it, and I like season 1 way better than I like season 2, but I still had a lot of problems with it. And one of those issues was they should have picked, we're either going to do the Romulan thing or we're going to do the Borg thing. You know, there's too much here that just doesn't have room to breathe. And so it feels like, the show has a bunch of potentially interesting ideas that it just has no time to explore in any kind of a satisfying way. And season 2, it's like, okay, I'm thinking the same thing, pick something, but it's because the show doesn't feel like it's about anything. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, if you wanted it to be about Picard and his guilt about his mom and all this stuff, like, okay, make the season about that. It's not.
Mhm.
If you want it to be about Seven and Raffi's, they have this completely off-screen relationship that ends apparently before the season starts, and then they spend the rest of the season, figuring out what they're going to be after that. Well, okay, if you make that feel
Make it about
important to the show, like,
yeah.
if you want to do it about Rios and deciding to stay in the 20, like, just make it about
That's
something.
that was my most frustrating thing, because the Rio storyline had every potential to be, I
Yeah.
think, like something really concise and say something really concise about what they were kind of gesturing at thematically. Like
Yeah.
thematically, they
Yeah.
were kind of
For sure.
gesturing at this idea of like, even out of great trauma, you can still like accept it as part of your history and past
Yeah.
and move forward with it in a way that feels like you're just accepting it and moving forward constructively. And I liked the concept of him having gone through an experience that was really horrible with ICE, that
Mhm.
was like literal human rights abuses, but then him also finding the beauty in the present day with Teresa, and like seeing like the people working to do really good work despite all the horribleness, and that's actually what humanity can be. Like, that's a good concept, but they don't really get into it. It's just sort of like he seems to have no opinion on his
Yeah.
experience with ICE, and then he also just falls in love with Teresa. It's like they're like separate experiences when they could have been like an intrinsically linked thing that he could have like struggled with.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He just sort of like, yeah, that ICE thing was weird. Also, she's hot.
Yeah. It
Like, that's
doesn't
it.
seem I think the Rios thing, the Rios story, if you can call it that, this season
Mhm.
is the part of the show that comes the closest to like actually making me angry.
Mhm.
Because I mean, first of all, they set up when reality changes before they go back in time. We see that the new reality with General Picard and President Annika and everything, it's bad because, okay, Earth has become totalitarian, right?
Mhm.
But it hasn't just become totalitarian; it's become xenophobic and isolationist.
Mhm.
So they want to prevent a xenophobic totalitarian dictatorship from taking over Earth. So they go back in time, and one of their crew gets arrested by ICE, which
Mhm.
some might say is a kind of xenophobic organization.
Just
you
a
know, that
little,
is
but
that is imposing xenophobic foreign, or not foreign policy, but political policy on people in this
Mhm.
country, mistreating people on the basis of where they're from and what color their skin is and all this stuff. Like, it seems to tie in pretty well with that future that they're trying to prevent.
Mhm.
And then it goes absolutely nowhere.
Yep.
Like, he gets arrested by ICE. He spends an episode in the concentration camp doing nothing, just completely sidelined, has no
Mhm.
contribution to anything in the story at all. Just sits there, actually watches the guards abuse people and does nothing. Just is like, oh shit, that sucks. You know, just sits there and waits for his friend to rescue him, like a hero would do. Just sit there passively and
Just, yeah, it's fun.
wait for your friends to rescue you. And then they do, and then, like, the next day, he's at a party in a tuxedo talking about how great the cigars are.
Yeah, it's the
And
21st century is
yeah,
great. It's
and
awesome.
it never comes up again. Like, I remember when I said something about that in my review of that episode, of the party episode, and I was
Mhm.
like, remember when he was kidnapped by ICE, which for him is like yesterday? And there were some people in the comments going, oh, just wait, just wait, there's like 5 episodes left, it'll come back, Never comes back. It's never
Nope, never
even mentioned.
mentioned. Not even,
It's
yep, not even mentioned.
Yeah.
And I get even more frustrated too. Like, another storyline that even would tie into, if we're talking about like the like fascist xenophobic future,
Yeah.
you have Soon, who we literally learn at the end of the series, like in episode 8, that just casually mentioned offhand, like his like desire for legacy is what
Yeah.
directly leads to this totalitarian regime and xenophobic regime. I'm like, oh, that's a great biting critique, like an Elon Musk billionaire-esque figure who's worried more about extending his legacy, helping
Yeah.
lead to this sort of totalitarian worldview. Like, doesn't necessarily espouse it, but the capitalist aims like sort of lead to that. And they
Yeah.
even reference in I think episode 3, Seven and Raffi are like in a sanctuary district that we
Yeah.
from like Deep Space Nine. I'm like,
From Deep Space
oh,
Nine. Yeah.
Well, yeah, which is right outside of his headquarters, so you can like see the exact contrast. And I'm like, oh, these dots are all really cool dots to connect. And then they ultimately have nothing to do with it because soon just like I'm just gonna weirdly monologue all the time and be a boring villain and run over Picard at one point, and that'll be all I do.
Yeah. Oh, and don't forget, he ran over Picard because Q told him to do it, even though apparently at the end of the season we find out that Q did all of this because he loves Picard.
Yeah.
That it's like,
I really wanted you to get run over.
yeah, like, oh, I'm so, yeah, don't worry, Jean-Luc, you're my favorite. I did all of this to free you of your guilt, and that was why I had that guy run over you with a car and try to kill your ancestor and stop her from doing this incredibly important space mission. And, you know, and apparently was involved somehow with you getting arrested by the FBI, or was there and did nothing to help you, or, you know what I mean? It's like, it feels like they came, it reminded me of like the last episode of the original series of the X-Files, like not the revivals that they did, but like the proper first run of the X-Files, where they did this epic final episode of the X-Files where Mulder was on trial, and they used that framework to go back over all the shit that had happened over all 9 years of the X-Files and try to wrestle this confusing, contradictory storyline about alien abductions and colonization and secret factions within the government that were working against the aliens or working for the aliens or whatever. And they try to tell that story in a way that makes it make sense and makes it seem like this is what the writers of the show planned all along. And it's awful. It's like, there's no fucking way you can pull this off. And with Q explaining to Picard at the end of this, it's like a miniature version of that. It's like, so wait a minute. Okay, just hang on a second. You caused all of this to happen so that Picard would feel better about his mom's suicide. So you caused planet Earth to become a totalitarian dictatorship.
And he even makes the point of like the going back in time was incidental. He says that in like episode 8.
Yeah.
It's like, the going back in time was incidental. So that's not even like part of the plan.
Yeah. So thanks, Q, for basically telling all of us who have sat through this show for the last 10 weeks. Yeah, you know, the main action of the show didn't really matter.
Yeah.
You know, they went back in time, but yeah, it's not really, who cares, right? It's only everything that's been happening since episode 3, but whatever, who cares?
Like my thing with that is like, I make this argument in my videos. Like I buy that this kind of messed up way of trying to teach Picard a lesson fits Q, because if you go back to Tapestry, like that's him making Picard go through this horrible like getting stabbed in order to accept like his future. Like it's honestly a similar idea as Tapestry too, for thinking about it. And also he's the one who like shoves them in front of the Borg and gets some of Picard's crew members killed and says, oh, it's a bloody nose. So like him doing fucked up stuff to teach Picard a lesson, like even getting people killed, fits. But in this season, they make a point of showing that Q's not really in control of everything. So he's like, he's going to teach Picard a lesson, but he's just really hoping it all works out by the end, you know?
I mean, and someone in the chat just mentioned, and think about this, they had extra time to work on the scripts because of COVID. And I was talking to my friend, Jason on the phone earlier today about this. And that was a point I brought up, which is I am almost certain that all 10 scripts were done before they rolled camera on episode 1 of this. Like the entire season had to have been scripted before they started actually shooting it. They could have fixed all of these problems at the script level. This isn't like old school TV where they're doing 25, 26 episodes and they're in production for like 6 months straight. And if something happens in episode 3, all of a sudden becomes a problem when they get to episode 20, they're kind of stuck with it because they just, you know, it's already done and it's been on TV by now and they have to write their way out of it. Like they didn't need to have any of those problems with this. They could have fixed all of it in the script before they ever shot a single frame of video footage. And they didn't.
I will tell you that no, because that's actually the exact point that I'm making the video that I just finished. And it was the argument that I was making at the beginning of the season, where it was like my problem with season 1 to a degree, and I think it's a problem that I have with Discovery as well, is that they have to do that exact thing where the production's starting while they're still finishing scripts, so they kind of like mystery box it a little bit so they can like have it nebulous enough that they can put whatever they want at the end, and ultimately that never feels satisfying to the mystery that they had set up, because it could never be, because they had written it so nebulously.
Right.
So that's my problem with that, and that was the problem with season 1, and my general problem with Discovery. But with season 2 of Picard, and I have this quote from Akiva Goldsman. He literally said this is a quote from him. He said, "The lesson I learned from season 1 is figure out the end earlier. If you're going to do a serialized show, you have to have the whole story before you start shooting. It's more like a movie in that way. You better know the end of your third act before you start filming your first scene." That's a literal quote from Akiva Goldsman about Star Trek Picard season 2.
And he just forgot after.
It's like, well, I guess he knew the ending. I guess he just didn't. But he's like, yeah, we know the ending now.
Yeah,
we'll
but
go back and
I
fix
just
the beginning, but we know the ending.
The ending was something like Q did it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool,
yeah.
we got the ending, everybody. We got the ending. Let's get to work. You know, it's well, and like I know it's bad in a fascinating way to me, because, and you mentioned this a little while ago, and you talked about one of the early episodes being one of the only times in the season where characters actually have discernible goals. That is lacking so much in this season, and that's such a basic writing mistake. And I don't know if I've ever seen, not just a Star Trek show, any show professionally made, that has done that, that has made that mistake to this degree. Like this, it's not just that it's the worst season of a Star Trek show. It's bad in a way. I'm not going to say it's like the worst show ever or one of the worst shows ever. I've definitely seen way worse shows or even seasons of shows than this, but it's bad in a specific way that I have never seen before. And that I'm surprised that I see from professional screenwriters. You know,
the argument that I agree with that in macrocosm, but even in microcosm, I make this argument with like the gala scene, the whole gala episode, right? It's a high storyline. And the way high storylines work are you set up at the beginning a clear goal. You like, here's the expectations. Here's what we got to do. Here's the expectations for us to get through this thing. And then you either fulfill those expectations or subvert them accordingly to have your characters like have to zig instead of zag. Like that's how the high storylines work. But in that episode, they do it for one little bit where it's like Gerardi's got like the thing, and she needs to like break into the security console in order to change things. And that's actually the one scene in that episode that's good, because then it's like, oh crap, I'm stuck here. I have to give in to the Borg Queen a little bit more in order to get out. And like that's a great scene. It's a good moment of tension. It builds off of like your expectations, but then she has to zig instead of zag, and it causes consequences. Good scene. But then after that moment, they get into the gala, and then they just sort of like wander about. Seven's over there talking to some random extras, just having a nice chit chat. And then Picard just like, well, I guess at this point I'll go walk over to Renee now. Like that's my whole plan. I'll just go walk over to it. Oh no, Brent Spiner's here. Ah, crap. I just sort of stepped in front of me. It ruined the whole plan.
I mean, Picard at the end of the episode, right before that episode ends with Picard literally saying, "I have a plan." And the camera pushes in on him and holds meaningfully, like, Picard's got a plan. Can't wait to see what the plan is. Next episode comes along. No plan.
Yeah.
We don't hear what the plan was. What did Picard say to them? That's that's the point you just made. Like, imagine that it's real life. Okay, that conversation continues. Like, Picard didn't just say, "I have a plan," and then go to bed. He told them what the plan was. So what did he tell them? And why don't we get to see it?
We're going to break in. Rios, you're going to be able to have some nice cigars. Seven, I want you to chit chat up the people. It'll be great. Just have a nice like conversation. It'll be fine. The rest of you hang out at the bar. It'll be cool. And then I'll just walk over to her. And hopefully no one will step in my way or guards will try to stop me. If that happens, we have no backup plan. Maybe a
Yeah.
certain spotlight operator will help us out. I don't know. We'll wing it from there. But if that happens, I'm pretty much screwed. So yeah, that's the plan, everybody. Everyone feel good about it? Oh, also, Talon basically saying, I have this ability to change my appearance and be anyone that I want to look like. And Per's like, no, don't worry about that. We'll only bring that up later on if we have to like sacrifice yourself at the end of the season. We won't use that ability at any point. But
also I have the ability to take over people's bodies.
Yeah.
Gosh, that might have come in handy if they're trying to get past, I don't know, security.
Yeah.
Nah, forget that.
And that's the other thing too, is like the whole bit at the end with just on this point where like Gerardi says one Renee must live, one must die, and it's like this nebulous, mysterious thing that's left for the audience to try and like think about for a week. And then we just get there and it's just like, oh, this ability that's never been brought up before. Yeah, she's gonna have to sacrifice herself using that ability that you've never seen before. That's what we were alluding to with that, where she has to become a fake Renee, not like just knock out. Like she has to sacrifice herself, not just like knock out soon. She could have just knocked him out, had the same thing. It's like, knock him out for 30 minutes. Oh, she's on the ship. Can't stop her now. Or like, I don't even know, just avoid him. Like, I don't, like, there's just so many ways instead of like letting yourself get murdered, I assume, then that. It was just very frustrating. Or take over his body. Yes, Matthew Raymond says.
Take over his body. I mean, but as far as like the, changing the appearance thing, sure would have been nice if they had set that up.
Yeah.
In a previous episode. Like, and speaking of things that, would have been nice if they had set anything up, when Traveler Wesley shows up out of nowhere, or should I say Will Wheaton, because he doesn't really play Wesley in any meaningful sense. He's just Will Wheaton showing up. Hi, everybody. It's me, Will. I'm back in the franchise.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see everybody. To recruit Corey for no reason. There's no reason why we have been given no reason why, other than the fact that she's like genetically engineered or something. We've been given no reason to think that there's anything special about her, that she's like a super genius or has some kind of, higher awareness, because like the whole deal with when Wesley got recruited by the Traveler in TNG, it was like, oh, Wesley's like a special little boy, He's a magic boy because he can do warp equations like Mozart composes symphonies. Like he's special, so that's why he's suited for this higher plane of existence. But Corey is just like a character that they had nothing to do with. Yeah, she was just, oh, we couldn't figure out how to write Soji into this season, so we'll give Issa Briones a completely different character to play that will do nothing and just kind of stand around and occasionally, have an argument with her dad.
Yeah,
and then
it was fun.
And then
she'll just walk away.
Yeah, she'll fuck her dad's shit up at the last minute because he didn't back up any of his files. And and then Wesley will just randomly walk up to her and give her a story that she has no reason to believe because she doesn't know about the time travelers or aliens or anything. Yeah. She's just coming in completely cold, and this dude walks up to her and says, oh, hi, my name is Wesley Crusher, but that won't mean anything to you, but I'll say it anyway. And you want to be a traveler? It's this really cool thing. We exist, in all of time and space, and we watch over the timeline, and, what do you say? Do you want to? And it sure would have been nice.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Any mention of that or like setup of that or even illusion, because they make the connection of like the travelers are the ones in control of the supervisors, which I think is like a decent enough thing to put into.
It's an attempt to tie it in somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like make an allusion to that then. Be like, hi, bud. My cat's here.
Yeah. Hey, kitty.
Just make an allusion to that and say, like, oh, like, I don't know, reference them like at some point earlier. I don't even know.
Have one scene where Talon is like at the tail end of a conversation with her somebody. Boss, and then have that be Wesley at the end, or have Talon have a scene with Corey and have her notice something about her. Like have Corey help solve a problem in a really innovative way, and Talon kind of go,
I
like
just tell somebody about
something to give so that it's not just an out of nowhere. Oh, by the way, here's this character who is not in this show who, like, if you don't already know who Wesley is, you have no reason to give a shit about this. This is just some guy who came in out of nowhere and is just like, hey, you want to do a thing with me? It's a thing I do. Sure.
Yeah, sure. It sounds great. I'm here for it. It's down.
I mean,
Yeah.
because like as much as people criticize the Marvel movies and how they've become this monstrosity, and it's like, if at this point, if you haven't watched all 20 something movies, you can't just start cold on, like there's a certain, I agree with that up to a point, but even something like Spider-Man No Way Home that definitely improves if you have seen the other Spider-Man movies and you know who these people are already. Like that's a given. Like if you know
Yeah.
the story of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, it definitely brings that movie up. But even if you haven't seen any of those, all of the important emotional beats for those characters in that movie are set up in that
movie. Like Andrew Garfield's rescuing, like he references Gwen Stacy, and then he's able to save Mary Jane in that same movie, and you get the emotional context of it.
Yeah, it means more if you saw the other movie, but you get it. It makes sense to you even if you're just watching this movie. And with Picard, there are so many like supposedly big important scenes, like Wesley showing up, or like the stuff with Picard and Q that is supposed to be this really meaningful stuff. And there's you don't really get in this season why Q is special, why we should give a shit about Q.
Mm-hmm.
He's just this guy who shows up and gives Picard a hard time,
slaps him,
Which, makes his life miserable, and then shows up in the last episode and is like, give me a hug. I'm dying. I don't want to die alone. I'm like, I mean, if you know who like I said in my review, it's like Riker leaving at the end of Nemesis. If you have a pre-existing investment in these characters, well, sure, you're going to feel something if you're like, oh, this is the last Picard Q scene, because you're thinking about all the episodes they had back on TV, right? But if you're just watching it for this series, there's no reason to give a shit about any of that. They didn't set any of it up.
Yeah, and it makes me very worried for season 3, because looking at what they did this season, especially with Rios, but even other characters, they just announced Issa Briones announced today that she's not coming back next season. Oh, really? She said farewell to Soji. So I'm like, both Rios and Soji are now out of the picture,
are gone,
of season 3, and like those are characters that we actually got. Like, as much as I have had issues with both season 1 and season 2 of Picard, it's like I like the characters,
sure,
and it's like you made me invest in these characters and these actors, and then you're just like, now we're just gonna ignore them so we can have our TNG stuffed reunion fest next season in this show. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I want my TNG, like I would love to have a nice little send off for those characters. It'd be nice to see them again, sure. But it's like they had their ending in All Good Things, or even Nemesis if you want it, and it's like I want these characters that you made me invest in, care about, and like feel something for, to have their own stories. And now you're just like, nah, they don't matter. See ya, we're gonna do our TNG reunion next season. And it's just like, it's just disappointing, because it like people call Discovery like nostalgia bait, and I will say, like, they have moments in Discovery where like, oh, here's this nostalgia, but it's like the show itself, it's trying to tell its own stories with its own characters doing its own thing, and it's not like overly worried about nostalgia. This season feels like it was just trying to play off of your nostalgia, and I worry that's going to get even worse in season 3.
That's, people have asked me like, well, aren't you hyped about season 3 because the rest of the crew is coming back? And I wish I could be, but because I'm like you, like I love TNG. Like it's like sitting under a warm blanket in front of a fireplace. Like, it's just a wonderful show. It makes me think of when I was a kid, and it introduced all these wonderful characters to me that I still love, and all these great actors. And it's like, I love TNG. Of course, I'd love to see Worf again. Of course, I'd love to see Dr. Crusher again. Of course, I'd love to see Geordi again. I loved seeing Riker and Troy in season 1. It'd be cool to see them again, right? But like, what assurance do I have from that? If it's the same creative team attempting to tell a story the same way they tried to tell it this year, what is there to be excited about?
It's showcases the different mindset, I think, between season 1 and season 2, because season 2 has a new showrunner, Terry Matalas came in, and like, as much as I had faults with Michael Chabon, like I said, my problem with him was less that he he told necessarily a bad story. It's just that he was a novelist, and I think he just was used to being able to tell more complex, meandering storylines than the time he necessarily had and the production level that he had in season 1. That would be my argument of the way he wrote it. But what I appreciated about season 1 is that it attempted to like comment and deconstruct and do something new with the character, where it was like, okay, he would go off to a different planet every week. Picard would go off to a different planet every week and not stay and actually deal with the consequences of his actions. And season 1 was kind of just deconstructing that. It's like Picard just screwed off from Starfleet at the moment where probably Romulans needed an advocate most, and it led to maybe not all his fault, but certainly like there's a certain responsibility that he probably felt like he had to try to advocate for these Romulans, and it left them in squalor that we see in episode 4, and like not really getting the respect they deserve. And like that's actually a great critique on the character about how he sort of abdicated his responsibility to go play off in the vineyard and not actually deal with stuff. That's a great commentary on his character and did something new with him. This season, while there's somewhat of a commentary that's being done about like him never having dated anybody throughout the show and always pushing back against that, it doesn't really feel like it's trying to take the character in a necessarily new direction or like say something new about him. It just sort of reiterates like, oh, look, Q's back. Isn't that cool? Oh, here's Wesley Crusher. Isn't that cool? Oh, is this episode, this whole season's a reference to Star Trek 4. Isn't that cool? That is not like really trying to say or do anything beyond that. It's like Nemesis. It makes allusions to it where it's like, oh yeah, ice and like the nature versus nurture theme of Nemesis, but it doesn't actually say anything about it. So
yeah, it faints at doing things. And like as far as trying to say something new about Picard, I mean, the way they did it in season 1, I thought that's an interesting take. And, to sort of let a little bit of the air out of his balloon and show that, yes, and not to make him into like a less admirable character, but just to show that, he was the guy who always gave the big inspiring speeches. And maybe that wasn't always enough. And maybe, because he, in the early stages of season 1 of Picard, like he tries to give the big inspiring speech and it doesn't work. It's like, that's not going to work this time, buddy, and that's interesting, that he's having to deal with people who are not going to treat him like the captain, who are not going to just defer to whatever he wants to do and just assume that he knows what to do and his wisdom is sound and everything. That's interesting. In season 2, it's, oh, how come he never had a girlfriend? And it's like, first of all, he had lots of girlfriends in TNG and the movies. He would
date his subordinates in very awkward ways.
Yes. It's not like, and so it was never really a part of his character in the old shows and movies. And it wasn't a part of his character in season 1. Now, he didn't have a romantic relationship, but it's not like he was living completely alone, like holed up in his chateau. Like there were people around him everywhere. And he didn't have a problem going out and talking to people. Like it's not like he was this socially isolated hermit who eschewed human contact and like his heart had turned to ice. Like they make it seem in season 2 where it's like, why have you never been able to form close relationships? Well, he's had close relationships in this show.
In all good things too. We learned that he marries Crusher. So like what was the difference between those timelines?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so it feels like something they just made up, at the last second for this season that doesn't fit even with their characterization of Picard that in their own show, never mind TNG. I mean, and I'm completely okay with changing stuff from TNG for like, if they said, you know what, we're going to, TNG did this, and this, but for our purposes, let's just ignore that. And we'll do like, I'm completely fine with that. I think they have every right to do that. But it's like, they're forgetting stuff from their own show. And then this season doesn't even really feel like it's about that. Like we're supposed to think at the end, because Q says, I did all this for you. We're supposed to feel like Picard's story and his dealing with the death of his mother and his guilt. Like we're supposed to feel like that was the most important story. But while you're watching the show, that just feels like one plot line out of about half a dozen. And none of them feel any more important than the other because, it's like, is that more important than, Rios and Teresa? Is that more important than Q puppeteering,
All this stuff.
Adam
Yep.
Sung? Like, what is that more important than the Europa mission or whatever? Like, it all feels like it's all just kind of the same.
Yeah. And the
And
things that they tell me aren't important either, like butterflies, like very important
oh
butterflies.
my God, the
But then
butterflies
like
thing.
we'll let a whole bus full of ICE detainees off, which I'm not saying I wanted them to stay on the bus and like go go to wherever they were going to go. But like there's no worry about that changing the future. There's no worry about like the literal Borgified guards getting murdered who presumably would have led full lives.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, if these things aren't going to matter in the show, then why do you set them up as mattering? Gerardi, they wrote a line for Gerardi to say where she says, "Careful, no butterflies," before they leave the ship for the first time. And it plays into it. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything for the rest of the series, except when fucking Rios has like a duffel bag with some phasers in it and goes, "Oh, got all the butterflies." Oh, okay.
Yeah, the only thing it possibly leads to is like the FBI agent Mulder, discount agent Mulder, showing up and capturing them for an episode, which he just releases them back right where they were left off the last episode. It's like, well, that wasted an episode of time.
There's a fight scene in Star Wars Episode 3 where I think it's a fight scene at like a launch pad where it's Obi-Wan and Anakin fight some bad guys, and it's like they show up, they fight the bad guys, and then at the end of the fight everybody goes their separate ways and the fight accomplishes nothing and changes nothing. It's basically just 5 minutes of just stuff that happens in the movie that means nothing. You could have just completely taken it out and the story would be exactly the same. There are entire episodes of Picard like that, where it's like they spend a whole episode with Guinan and Picard in FBI custody. They just get released, means nothing. The FBI agent never comes back and does anything.
He loses his job, which is another butterfly. Which
which is another butterfly. Rios gets arrested by ICE, detained, means nothing. Actually, it would have been nice if either they had said that the release of those guys from ICE from that bus was a good thing. Like maybe it had brought about some positive change in the future to send a message of like, it's good that, to free people from this unjust imprisonment, right? Or do it the other way and use it as a source of dramatic tension. And when Seven and Raffi stop the bus and come on board to get Rios, maybe Rios wants to free everybody, but Seven and Raffi say you can't. That would change history. Make it so that if it means something dramatically.
Yeah. I mean, like I hate to do what I would have done. I would have loved to do it where like Rio says, screw it, we're letting him off anyways. And they do it anyways. And it causes a source of conflict between Seven and everyone in Rios. And Rios is like, this is the way we make the future better. Like we can make it better. And that would actually tie into his arc. And then,
have it. Yeah, exactly. Like there are so many different things you could have done to just have
a different point of view.
Yeah. Or to have the characters make choices that mean something. That's another, like a basic mistake, and for like a basic screenwriting mistake. The characters don't have specific goals, which means that the audience can't set expectations, which can then either be fulfilled or subverted. And they don't make meaningful choices. Nothing that they like. When Picard decides to do this instead of that, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't cost him anything. He's not taking any kind of a risk. He just does things that mean nothing. And, like they get whatever they need for the story to move forward because they make a guess that turns out to be right, or because Q drops in and does something. Like there's no meaningful choice made by anybody in the, like I said that in the review, one of the last episodes. I said, nothing meaningful happens in this episode, and somebody replied, but Gerardi and the Borg Queen merged and started a whole new kind of Borg. How is that nothing? That happens off screen. That's not part of this show. She gets on the ship and flies away. That's not what the show is about. It means nothing to the show. If you want to do a season or even an episode about Gerardi and the Borg Queen going back to the collective and trying to start a new version of the Borg based on cooperation. But like, that's fine. Make a story about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what this is about. They just mention it. Like Gerardi's like, yeah, we're going to do that. I think that'd be a good idea. And they go off and do it off screen, I guess.
Yeah.
So how does that count? You know?
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I like it in terms of like a larger Star Trek universe sense that like, oh, we can now do something new with because there's been a lot made about Star Trek Voyager overusing the Borg and kind of ruining the Borg and kind of making them flat as a villain because they sort of overuse them. And I like conceptually, it's like, oh, now we can do something like this cooperative, whatever you want to call it, can be like a new way to use the Borg in the future. That's cool. Has nothing to do with this show, but I like it as a possible thread for future writers in other shows to pick up at some point.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing for this show to give a crap about.
No. And it's not like, I don't feel like they deserve credit for for doing something that maybe could lead to good stories that somebody else might write someday.
Yeah, like maybe Discovery will encounter this Borg way in the 31st century and they'll tell a really cool story with it. That would be great. Sure. They don't get credit for Discovery's possible.
It doesn't make this season any better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of really frustrating, like basic writing mistakes and missed opportunities and, you know, payoffs to non-existent setups, like, you know, really baffling decisions that they made. But on the other hand, go ahead.
Oh, my one last, because were you about to transition to the other?
I was about to transition into the other one, but please tell me what else.
I'll just make one last thing since you're here. The only thing that like, the one thing that like deeply upsets me honestly more is just like something that you kind of addressed in some of your videos is like the conversation around this season, because I really dislike how like I dislike this season. I think Picard season 2 is probably the worst of this modern Trek, but I just dislike the like Schadenfreude of like other people who have always disliked modern Star Trek being like, oh look, see, this is proof that it all sucks. And you were mentioning it before, but like even the people who are beyond like just the woke, like SJW is woke, whatever, like even beyond those people, there's like a certain group of people that are just like, oh look how horrible Star Trek is ruined forever and the franchise is dead. And I'm like, there's so much other stuff going on like now that I really, really love. Like I know you and I disagree about Lower Decks, but like Discovery, I love Lower Decks. Prodigy I think is really solid too.
Yeah, Prodigy is solid.
Yeah, so it's like it's still a wonderful thriving franchise, and one bad season of one show doesn't prove you all right, but I just dislike that like weird Schadenfreude delight at any perceived misstep of a franchise, and it just disappoints me.
Yeah, well, but I don't get that either, because like I am critical of it. I don't just, you know, praise everything with Star Trek in the title because it's Star Trek. I think that would be silly and dishonest, because it's just not how I actually feel.
It doesn't make the show better either.
No, it doesn't make the show better. I mean, I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not Will Wheaton. I'm not paid to cheerlead for the show, right? And I don't know if I could do that as well as he does anyway, because he seems like his heart is completely in it and he genuinely loves all of this stuff. Like I feel like if they cut his pay down to zero and said, we still want you to host the Ready Room, but do it for free, he'd probably do it.
Probably would, yeah.
He just seems like he's totally on board with everything, and good for him. You know, if that's how he genuinely feels, good for him. But like if Voyager didn't kill Star Trek, Picard's not going to kill Star Trek. Like, it's not the first bad Star Trek show. It's not the first bad Star Trek movie. It's like there has been bad Star Trek in the past. It's still Star Trek. I don't think like, oh, that's Nemesis with them. Nemesis isn't real Star Trek. Sure it is. Voyager's not real Star Trek. Yes, of course it is. Just because I don't think it's very good doesn't mean it somehow doesn't count. Like it's part of it.
Well, I made this argument too, that like one of the reasons that I like Star Trek, and part of why I think it's like such an interesting franchise beyond just like, it's like, I love it as someone who likes to get inspired about the future and like the ideals that it teaches. But I also love it as like a weird little sci-fi show, just like saying weird little sci-fi show stuff, and doing like fun things. But also like I learn a lot from it as someone who wants to write and like learn about television. Like you can learn just as much from something being bad and telling a bad storyline, sometimes more than if it was like a perfectly good storyline, because you have more to like all the stuff that you and I are talking about. We just talked for an hour about like ways this could have been better, ways you could have maneuvered. And as someone like, I like writing, and so I look at that and being like, oh, this is a great way to learn. Like I look at Voyager, and Voyager is great. I particularly like Voyager, but Voyager has a lot of missteps and mistakes too. You can look at me like, they could have done that better or changed this way, and you like learn as a writer. And that's what I love about Star Trek, is it's a franchise that enables conversations because of how diverse it is in both quality and storytelling and things that it does. It's like, that's what I love about it. It allows numerous conversations within it. So
yeah. Well, and I don't get what the point is. If you are a fan of something, I don't get what the point is of hoping that it will be bad. You know, like I remember even back when I was a teenager and I was watching Voyager when it originally aired, and I was not liking it. I was thinking, I don't like this show. I think this is a bad show. I didn't tune into each new episode hoping that it would be a bad episode. You know, and occasionally when there was a good Voyager episode, one that I really liked, I was happy. I was like, oh, great. That was a great episode. You know, the same thing with Picard. It's not like I'm happy that it was bad. I want it to be good. I want all of it to be good. What is the point of wishing? It's like saying you're a fan of a particular baseball team and then rooting against them in every game.
Yeah.
It's like, of course I want the show to be good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to automatically think it is. If I might think it's bad, but I wish it was better. You know, like, what is so you're right. The Schadenfreude thing. Yeah. I knew it was going to suck. Well, it's good for you. Like
was someone in the chat said, does this person talking about me think that Discovery is better than Picard? It's not.
Yeah.
Well, number one, the thing I was going to say, number one, I think personally, I think Discovery is better than Picard, at least in my opinion. But also, like, if the things that turn you off from both Discovery and Picard, like its serialized storytelling and things like that, are like the same thing that like bother you, that's fine. Like,
sure.
The thing that gets me is like they put it all in one bucket is like the same level of quality, which I don't think is the same. Like they have similar issues and problems, like the serialized sort of mystery box storytelling.
Yeah.
But you can also find different things to love in both shows. Like both Picard and Discovery have things that you can love and hate in different measure, and trying to do different things and have different like ways of storytelling even within their serialized storytelling. So it's just like, it's just weird that there's this like constant flattening of everything. It's like, it all sucks, you know, or it's all, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. It's like it's all or nothing. Either, because I get that on my reviews. People comment, they say things like, I didn't like Picard this year, so they're like, well, I thought you liked new Star Trek. Well, I like it when I think it's good.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and you're right. There are, it's, I don't know. I think part of it is like, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was just saying, I think it just goes to like, it's a need to flatten everything into either thing good or thing bad. Like everything on everything, especially in online discourse, is like it needs to be good or bad. And if it's not all good or all bad, then I need to sort it into one of those buckets. And you can't talk about the nuance. Like I think Discovery season 4 was good, but I had major issues with it, especially in the latter half that I think you did. But it's like to not talk about like the gradations of that, I think is a disservice.
Yeah, it's a disservice, and like I don't see how you can do it any other way. Like especially with Discovery season 4, because I pretty much liked the first half of it. I thought there were a couple of really, really strong episodes in the first half, and the second half it kind of, you know, ran off the road a little bit. But then the last episode I thought was really good again. Like they pulled it back and managed to stick the landing. So like how do I compress that into good or bad? You can't.
You can't. You can't.
Know?
But people just have a need to like see things all in one way, which is like why, if we're gonna do the transition to Strange New Worlds, like I've even seen people be like, Strange New World sucks. It's more wokeness, and I'm like, what? What? Well, number one, Star Trek's always been woke, so there's that. But it's
there's
just
that
like
small detail.
It's just like the need to like press it all into the same mold and not like discuss the differences or the like abilities of things to have to be more than just one thing. So
yeah, there's like this I don't know. I mean, there are like two extremes in the fan base. There are the people who are completely uncritical of everything, and like every new episode of every show is the best thing ever.
mm-hmm.
And then there are the people who hate everything that was made after Enterprise. You know, so like the JJ movies, Discovery, Picard, all of the new, everything post Berman era is automatically bad. And then there are the people on the other side that are like, you know, the most recent episode of Prodigy was the greatest episode of Star Trek I've ever seen. And I'm just like, look, I'm glad you like it. I like Prodigy too. I think Prodigy has been very solid so far, but it's like, I really don't see how you get there as far as best episode of anything Star Trek ever. So, you know, there's like these two extremes. And if you fall somewhere in the middle, there are some people that need you to be one of those.
Mm-hmm. They need to slot you in that bucket. And it's like,
no, you have to either think all Star Trek is the best thing ever, or you have to hate every single thing about it.
Yeah. And then, and also like, that you're saying your opinion has to be the opinion of everybody else. Like my opinion's like, I like to get it on a disagreement. We don't need to talk about, because I do want to talk about Strange New Worlds, but it's like,
yeah, please.
I love Lower Decks. It is personally one of my favorite Star Trek shows ever, definitely of the modern era. And it's one of my favorite Star Trek shows ever. I adore it with all of my heart, and I appreciate what it's doing and saying. You don't like it. It's not something that like speaks to you. You've made in your reviews. Like I don't want to necessarily speak to you, but your reviews have been kind of like mixed down on it. And like, that's cool. I appreciate, like, I love listening to your reviews on it, because like, oh, that's an opinion that I appreciate. And I like seeing Steve's perspective on the show that I love. And that's a cool thing to hear.
Well, and from my perspective, recognizing that I don't know for sure, it seems like I am in the minority as far as not liking Lower Decks. Like most of the people, at least most of the fans that talk about it on social media, seem to like it. And some seem to really, really like it. So I feel like I'm in the minority there. Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm saying, well, if you guys don't want me around anymore, I guess I'll just leave. It's like, no, if most of you like the show and I don't really dig it, that's okay. I'm fine with that. I'm not upset. I'm not mad at the people who like it. I don't feel like resentful. Oh, stupid show. I don't know what they see in that stupid show. Like, you know, it's fine.
It's like, but it's like, you need to be, that's what it is. It's like the point of it that people I think get into is like, their opinion needs to be correct, and they need to be in the majority. It's like, we are correct, and we are like, everyone agrees with me, is like, the needs to be the case. And you're dumb for thinking, like, you're wrong and therefore dumb. And also there's only a few of you. It's like, why can we just like have varieties of opinions? Like, that's the whole point of Star Trek, infinite diversity. And like, we're allowed to all have different opinions and different things.
Yeah, I know. I love how people say, like, you know, most people like it. Okay.
Like,
what am I supposed to do with that?
like, I am not one of them.
Or like when they do the opposite, when people say, you know, oh, you like Discovery. Most people hate Discovery. I mean, I don't think that's true, but even if it was, what do you expect me to do with that information? Oh, well, most people don't like it. Well, I guess I don't like it either. Like, what the fuck is that? Like that's you have really misunderstood the point of this whole thing.
Yeah.
If I'm making a video reviewing a show, I'm telling you what I think about it. I'm interested in what some other people think about, like you said about, you know, even though you like Lower Decks, you're interested in my reviews, and vice versa. Like you're one of the people, and there's other people who I follow on Twitter or occasionally try to watch their videos. We don't always agree, but I'm interested in what they think because I respect their opinion. And, you know, so I mean, I care about their opinion in that way, and that I'm interested in it, but like, it's probably not going to change my mind.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. If I think something's good and you think something's bad, I can understand why you feel that way, maybe, but it's not going to make me think, yeah, actually, you've talked me into it. I don't like it anymore. Like, that's just not how that works.
Yeah. It's like what good criticism is you just go like you come in like having education on like what to look for, what to have, like have a critical lens. But at the end of the day, all you can do is offer your opinion, because if you just try and offer up what you think people want to hear, it's going to be like milk toast anyways, and just reiterative of like the larger point. And it's like, then you're not really saying anything interesting, unique. Like, I'm going to say my perspective. I'm going to say what I think about something. And, you know, hopefully my videos will be successful because I like to pay the bills, you know, but like at the end of the day, I just like all I can offer you is my opinion, and agree or disagree, but it's my opinion. And that's all that I can give you.
Yeah. And right and wrong aren't really the operative terms, because it's not like if I say, you know, the first episode of Strange New Worlds was great, that I'm factually correct. I'm expressing an opinion. There is no factual correct in that scenario. It's an opinion. If someone else comes along and says, I thought it was crap, I can disagree with them, but they're not factually wrong. You know, like, that's just not the way that works.
Yep. It's just, that's not, And it's just, I think that I think there's just a fundamental lack in a lot of, especially in a lot of the loudest spaces of like, just not understanding that of how critical analysis works, which is disappointing. But
so
that
anyways,
being said, what is factually correct is Pike's beard is beautiful. So
he's rocking quite a beard there at the beginning of that episode, isn't he?
Yes.
Yes, he is. I mean, I called in my review, I called it a depression beard, but there's nothing depressing about it. It's quite a it's quite a glorious bit of facial hair the dude's got going on there.
Yep. Like my favorite, like it's just like the girl who he wakes the other captain that he wakes up with in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
Who she wakes up to Pike making pancakes, watching a sci-fi movie with his beard in their like lovely cabin. I'm like, girl's got the best life. Like her, that's what all I want. Just answer.
Why would anybody want to leave? So I found the first episode very encouraging, and vindicating in a way, because I mean it's one episode. We don't know how the rest of the season is going to go, but it was a very strong beginning, a very encouraging beginning. And I say I felt vindicated in a way because I have thought for a long time that the people making these new shows are basically talented people. You know, when even the creative team of Picard this season, which I thought was terrible, I thought basically they're talented people. I don't understand a lot of the choices they're making. I don't get a lot of what they're doing, but they're not basically bad writers or bad creative people. Like, they're capable of doing good work, and you see flashes of it here and there, even in Picard, and you see a lot of it in Discovery, because there's a lot of Discovery that has been terrific. But I have thought, you know, if they would just abandon this attempt to tell a super duper serialized season-long story and go back to doing something that's more episodic, I feel like they could really nail it. Because they seem like they know Star Trek and they like Star Trek and they have a handle on the basics. You know, let's see what they could do if they just tried to, you know, like I joked earlier, you know, if you have a story that would fit one episode, tell it in one episode. Yeah. See how that goes. And they did it for the first episode of Strange New Worlds. And apparently that's the plan for, you know, this series, that's going to be the format. And it was terrific.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree, and I'll be open and honest, because I'm a CBS shield, but no, actually, because I was like,
checks in the mail, baby.
Yeah, but no, I just being honest, I have actually seen the first 5 episodes, because they actually CBS sent me screeners for them. Again, because I'm a shield. Not really. It's because you get a screener because you're a member of you're a critic. You know, you get exactly. I'm a member of the
LGBTQ
Critics Association, so I get.
There you go.
Like yeah.
Goddamn right.
But yeah, no, I've seen the first 5. I can't speak too much about them,
right?
Other than the first one, but I will say they're all really, really solid and do like tell episodic storytelling, and I think they're all like really encouraging and like really, really fun episodes. And speaking on this one, like I agree, like I love Discovery. issues with Picard. I love Discovery, and I appreciate the desire to try and do something new that Discovery was doing, in that it's like trying to tell serialized storytelling. And I like that Star Trek taking those risks. But seeing this like return to like the episodic format, I think it works really, really well. And I think the episode is just so much fun and tries to tell that like kind of not like the most biting critical like political story ever, but definitely in there. And the other thing that I really loved about this episode that I've seen is that I think that these actors and also the way the characters are written bring such a sense of like having lived before this appearance on screen. Like they feel like they come fully formed and like have a history in just the way that they talk and present themselves and exist within a space. I think is just, it comes across as like, oh, these are fully fleshed people in this very first episode. So even though there's a story being told, I feel like there's more going on here. Like people have lived on this ship before. And I like that quite a bit.
Yeah. It kind of goes along with what I thought about it, which is it feels very confident. It feels like the creators of this show and the actors and everybody involved, they have a very strong sense right away of what this show is and of its voice and its tone. And that's something that Star Trek doesn't always get that early. You know, like it took TNG a little while to figure out what it was going to be. It took Discovery a little while to figure out what it was going to be. The first season of Discovery has some pretty rough patches where it's like, what are they even doing? But they figured it out eventually. And Strange New Worlds feels like they've got it figured out. At least their intention is, we know what they might change it as they go on. But right now, after one episode, it feels like they know what this show is. They know what they know what they want to do, and they've got it all figured out. And there's a confidence in that is reassuring and kind of thrilling to see them like, okay, we've got it. Now just watch. We've got this, you know, and I really appreciated that feeling of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite thing to talk about with the episode, though, is the most surprising thing for me. I'm just randomly jumping around, but the most surprising thing for me was, of all the characters of watching this first episode, I'm like, oh, you might end up being my favorite. Nurse Chapel.
Oh, yes.
Was great. She just has this weirdo dork energy that I'm just like, you're a little bit off kilter, and I like it.
I love the way she goes, gotcha, when she injects the guy when he comes off the turbo lift, the guy who ran away. I love that.
My favorite is like when the guy gets up and runs off into the ship, she kind of smiles at it. Like she's just kind of like looking excited. Forward to it.
It's like I'm going to get to chase this guy, aren't I? Yeah.
I'm like, make them do that. Like transporters don't do that. Make them do that.
Yeah, well, you better figure it out. Yeah. I've said this I joked about this on Twitter a few weeks ago when they released those character trailers, and then I said it in my review of the episode. It's my favorite retcon from the original series is that this version of Nurse Chapel has a personality.
Yeah.
You know, it's like she's not just there to hand things to the doctor and occasionally have a crush on Spock.
Like be creepy on Spock. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more like, oh no, she's a person with a personality. That's great. I like that. You know, I'm glad they changed that.
Yep. Yep. Very much so. I love that.
Yeah. She was great.
And also is the inventor of like the face changing stuff, which we get. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a nice little like, oh, nurse, like every time like Cisco becomes a Klingon in Deep Space Nine, he gets to give credit to Chapel now.
That's right. She figured that out. Yeah. And I liked I liked the cadet version of Uhura. I liked her having that little scene with the runaway in the elevator where she kind of tries to calm him by talking about this sport on their planet that she knows about because she did research, and she can kind of engage him in conversation and calm him down, but also distract him so that he can get caught eventually. Like, I just thought that was a way of introducing us to to her as a character, but doing it by just having her involved in the story. You know, don't just have an exposition scene where she's like, I'm Uhura and here's my deal and here's where I come from. No, we just see her doing a thing that reveals some of who she is, which
Yeah, I love it. It's like, it
yeah.
just shows how confident she is without like it being stopping cold me like I'm really confident. I know all these like she does say that, but it's just like it's just a way to show that like, oh, she already did all the research. Like they just came to the Spanish. She's done all the research. She knows the sport.
Yeah.
She can speak their language. Like it just is shown. And I thought that was really cool. And it's nice to see like an Uhura at this stage in her life. I mean, like Uhura, we never really got to explore her all that much regardless as a character. Like Nichelle Nichols is great. Zoe Saldana is great.
Of
like
course.
they've both been great versions of those characters and done a wonderful job. But this version of them, of Uhura, I think at least like gives us not only a great Uhura, but this Uhura at this stage in her development of like being a cadet, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And it's nice that both in terms of how the character is written and how she is performed, that it doesn't feel constricted by what Nichelle Nichols did, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the similar thing to how Ethan Peck plays Spock, you know, he's not trying to do a Leonard Nimoy impression, you know. He's not trying to do his version of whatever Leonard Nimoy did. He's playing the same character. He's doing, they're very similar in many ways, and they're supposed to be the same person. But he has the freedom to give his own performance and to play the character the way he plays the character, which I think is really super important and is cool, you know? Yeah.
And I just think he also comes in with like a confidence of playing the character and like pulls it off really well and like can have his own unique take on it without it feeling like overwhelming, like overwhelmingly decided by previous people. And also too, can we talk a little bit about Hot Spock?
Yeah, he's been hitting the gym there on Vulcan.
Yeah, it's like he and T'Pring, like dang, like I was like, okay, all right, we're gonna start off with a Spock sex scene. All right, that's where we're going with this.
Yeah.
I have interesting thoughts about that, but overall, I was like, okay, you're gonna go from bearded Pike to Hot Spock. I might have a problem here.
I love when Pike calls him, and his first line is a somewhat uncomfortable. Are you naked?
And then, my favorite thing is T'Pring is like he was about to be. He's like, oh, okay, little slide there. I was about to get laid. You ruined it.
I love that T'Pring calls him Chris.
Yes, yeah.
T'Pring says, you know, she says something like, oh, we were in the middle of something. It's a special night, Chris, you know. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, I like that because that goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like it's a sense of like these characters existing before this episode.
Yeah.
Like you get, there's a familiarity there that like speaks to prior history than what we get right in this episode and get to see. And I like that there's evocation of like these characters that existed before being on screen. So I like subtle things like that. I think are really sell that sort of thing.
Yeah. I like that Pike's personal story ties in with the plot of the episode. That his struggle with knowing his fate gives him the insight to address the problem and talk to the aliens. I thought that was really sharp, just fundamentally sound writing, you know.
I liked oh sorry no
please
I was gonna just jumping off of that is like the other thing that I enjoyed about that, because I agree with you, is that I like that it also is informed by what we learned in Discovery, and that so much of this story, like even the twist at the end of like what caused this whole problem is based off of Discovery. And I liked that I mean, there's the sort of like cynical mind person of me of being like, I like that in the sense of like it allows people to not just say, well, look, this is the show that's doing great because it's not like Discovery and they're ignoring Discovery and it's the onboard. Because I've seen people say that where it's like, see, this is what Discovery should have been, and like Discovery sucks. And it's like, no, there's a clear lineage of history from Discovery to this show, and I like that the show is not embarrassed by that. But then also too, it does in a much more like positive sense. I like it in the sense that it's like it makes this universe feel bigger and cohesive, that like it connects to all these things, that these characters do connect to what we saw in Discovery, and Discovery is still part of this universe. And I just like this like when people talk about building a shared universe, which Star Trek it had done before modern era. But like the problem that we see with it with like DC and things like that is like they try too hard to like shoehorn everything in and like shove it in. But here it feels natural and feels like it's just part of the way that things would interact with each other and bounce off of each other instead of feel like crammed into the story. And I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, well, because yeah, to me that's the only way to do that is
Mm-hmm.
it should be its own show, telling
Mm-hmm.
its own stories. But if there is a natural place where an allusion to something from another show would fit, then
Mm-hmm.
do that. But don't force it. Don't like all of a sudden have like, oh, look, there's Admiral Archer. He's 100 years old or whatever, and here 150 years old. It's like unless there's a reason to do that. If there's a reason, if you can think of a good reason to have Scott Bakula on the show, great, go for it. I love Scott Bakula. But if you're just trotting him out to be like, here, Star Trek fans, remember this character? Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
not good. But if it's because it feels organic, then yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that shouldn't be your goal. Like as a writer on the show, your goal shouldn't be to think up organic reasons to bring in other stuff. It should be tell your
Tell a
stories
story.
about your characters, do this show, and if there are opportunities to cross over, great. But
Mm-hmm. It's like
that
tell your
shouldn't be the
story and be
main
like, oh,
focus.
this would make sense for this character to show up. Like
Yeah.
Robert April being one. Like he's just like,
Yeah.
oh, we need an admiral character. Why not have it be Robert April? That makes
Why not?
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you can touch on the lineage of the Enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
and have kind of like a boss figure introduced for Pike that
Mm-hmm.
has
Gotta
a
have our one
natural.
admiral for every show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like and I like, even though he was only in a couple of scenes, I thought April was really good. I liked
Mm-hmm.
his dynamic with Pike. I like that, he's clearly the boss, but Pike is comfortable enough with him that he'll sass him a little bit about spooking his horse, and
Yeah.
and push back on him a little bit. He won't just, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, but there's
Yeah.
clearly respect.
Yeah. Another subtle thing too in that scene, I also just like the constant, like subtle renewable energy that we see throughout modern
Yeah.
Star Trek. Like
Yeah.
we see the wind turbines in this episode, and then also in like Discovering Picard, we see that the San Francisco Bridge or the Golden Gate Bridge is covered in solar panels.
Yeah.
It's just like subtle little like, oh, we all use renewable energy in the future, which I liked. So it's
Yeah.
just a small subtle thing. So
Yeah, I like that too. I also like that apparently Pike is living in the house that Captain Kirk will buy in Star Trek
Yeah.
Generations. I'm sure it's not the same house, but it looks like the same house. It's a very similar kind of house.
Kind of vibe.
And I like to think that when we see him in Generations, that Kirk has just been squatting in Pike's old house.
It's like, look, he had to give it up to go to Talos 4. I might as well.
Yeah. He wasn't using it. Nobody else lives here. Come on.
Yeah. Another thing too, that speaking of like that Pike house, I loved the connection that they made between oh my god, the movie
The Day the Earth
Stood Still, which was about an alien coming to Earth and giving a big grand speech about coming together and unifying and doing better, which is what Pike does to the other aliens at the end of the episode. I was like, oh, that's a nice little, I see, like thematic resonance. I see what you're doing there.
It means something. Yes, like the things in the episode mean something.
Mm-hmm.
What a concept.
Yeah, and it's also like a meta commentary on the ability of science fiction to inspire.
Yeah,
in and of itself, because that's what Una is saying at the beginning of the episode.
At the beginning,
always, so
absolutely.
it all ties together thematically through like the
so well done.
Yeah,
and I mean, I know I was talking with, like I said earlier, I was talking with my buddy Jason about it, and he said he felt like the episode was a little rushed. Mm-hmm. In terms of like once it got into the plot of, you have to rescue Una and the other officers and then blah blah blah, like, and I guess I can kind of see that a little bit. Like that didn't bother me when I watched it, but I would, having sat through the season of Picard I just did, I would much rather have the problem of the episode moves a little too fast than the opposite problem of nothing happens for 5 episodes in a row and then this much stuff happens. You know what I mean? Like if you have to have one imperfection, I would rather, well, it moved a little fast. I'm okay with that.
That's always the issue with like pilots too. Like pilots either move way too slowly, where you see like in Encounter at Farpoint where it just like stops to be like, and here's this part of the ship, and here's this character, and here's this, or you get things that move a little bit too quickly because it's like trying to hit all these beats to like get you introduction. Like I think Lower Decks pilot also is a little bit faster in that sense because it's like trying to introduce these characters and dynamics a little bit. So I feel like that's the pacing is always. Its pacing is always difficult in anything, but especially in pilots, it's always hard.
because you have to establish a whole bunch of stuff. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would say as far as pilots, I thought this was one of the better ones of the
I
Star
think so.
Trek franchise. I wouldn't say it was the best pilot, but it's definitely like if this was like a baseball league, it would be like first division. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's in the top half of pilots for sure.
Yeah,
Of
I
Star
would.
Trek shows.
You could even argue that technically this isn't a pilot too. The cage
That's
is
true.
technically, yeah. But
That's true.
but no, I see what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Like I would. I would definitely be in the upper half. I would argue like you could make an argument for Emissary, or me personally, I would argue like Second Contact. I did really like that one, even though I know you're not the biggest fan of Lower Deck. So
Right.
I think it's in contention with those two, and even like for all that you can talk about Voyager and Enterprise, like Caretaker and Broken Bow are actually strong pilots too. I think as well.
I think it's probably better than any other pilot episode I've seen other than Emissary and Caretaker. I still think those are probably the two best pilot episodes. Even though I wound up not really liking Voyager as a series, the pilot is terrific and really sets up the potential for what could have been a super exciting, interesting show. And one of the reasons that I kind of am down on Voyager in general is because I don't feel like it realizes a lot of that potential that it set up in that excellent first episode. And the first episode of DS9 is just fantastic. I mean, it's
Emissary is great
and gutsy, and it's like, hey, guess what? You like TNG? This ain't going to be like that.
I'm saying your dad's Star Trek.
Yeah, like, and it's like, I love, like, let's just get this out of the way up front. If you like TNG, this is going to be different. So we hope you like this too, but this ain't the same thing. You know, and I love that they just lead with that. They have Cisco getting into an argument with Picard, like, oh shit, the lead character of this new show doesn't like Captain Picard. How's that for a gutsy creative choice? The new guy doesn't like the guy that you all love. He thinks he's an asshole. So but yeah, with the Strange New Worlds first episode is, like I said, the confidence, the ease with which it either reintroduces us to characters that we've seen in Discovery or introduces us to new characters that we haven't met yet. Everybody, like, there are certain characters that don't really have a lot to, like Ortega's doesn't really have much, but there's enough that we can sort of see her and be like, okay, I know who that is. Get like a little bit of a sense of her, you know.
La'an, we got a decent amount. Like her backstory with the Gorn is dark as all hell.
Oh my God. It's like, you thought like her last name was going to be the interesting part about her. Like, no, fuck that. Did you hear what happened to her ship, to her family, like, to her? Jesus. Like, holy shit.
Which I hope means we're getting a Chekhov's Gorn there, which means we might get to see the Gorn.
I would love to see the Gorn. The Gorn are one of my favorite Star Trek aliens because they're so fucking goofy. It's like, I love it. I mean, I'm sure they'll update the makeup and the character design, kind of like they did for Enterprise when they had a Gorn episode. But it's like, I love the Gorn. I love the goofy fucking aliens that are just like, hey, it's a lizard man. Fuck it. You know,
those are my favorite, like Star Trek things. Are just like, it's just a weird nonsense, like again going back to Picard, like the space orchids, or like even Encounter at Farpoint, you have the like space jellyfish.
Yeah,
just like the space jellyfish sex that you get in Encounter at Farpoint.
It's the reminder of, like, you know, sometimes this shit is pretty weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's not all like super serious, you know, social commentary. It's like, no, sometimes it's just really weird.
Also, something that someone pointed out to me last night, because I was on a different podcast talking about the premiere, the alien species that they visit on the planet in this episode.
Yeah.
Same alien as the kid from the Short Trek's Children of Mars.
Oh, no kidding. I wondered if they were like reusing an established species. And
it's the same alien.
I couldn't quite remember, but that's cool. I thought maybe they were doing something like that. Cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice like little reference, because then it ties into Picard too, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I guess they joined the Federation or something.
Or their kid gets stolen and gets forced to go to school.
A Starfleet officer kidnapped one of them or something. You know, something happened. There's some connection.
It makes some weird traumatizing backstory for that one child, and then they get murdered on Mars. It's fine.
Exactly. It doesn't end well, and it didn't begin well either, and it's just all around sad. We're sorry.
Poor child. But yeah, no, it's a strong point. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specifically that I like. I mean, the other thing too, I mean, I made a joke about it, and again, this is not my observation, but someone last night, but I liked it a little bit because I'm writing my Sex and Star Trek part 2 video right now. Not to necessarily talk about one part of that video that I talk about is my issues with the episode Lessons in TNG, where Picard starts dating one of his subordinates. And it's like very awkward. And it's like you could talk about it in like a harassment sort of way. And I don't think that was the intention, but like it's very uncomfortable how like a captain of a ship is dating a subordinate. And I liked in this episode with Pike, the person that he's like seeing is another captain who technically even has higher clearance than he does. So it's like they're like it's not this like question of like dating someone who's underneath you in power imbalance. It's like they're equals. And I thought it was just a subtle thing, but I was like, oh, that's nice to see, and that kind of thought put into it.
Yeah, and I liked that from the impression that we're given of that, it feels like it's not like a long-term committed relationship, but at the same time, it's more than just a hookup.
Yeah.
You know, it's like because he says like, if I might still be here in a month, you know, we'll get together. You know, it's not like they're boyfriend, girlfriend going steady or whatever, but it's also not like Captain Kirk, you know, pick up a chick on an alien planet. Yeah. And it seems like, and she's a captain, he's a captain. It's like, oh, okay, they have a thing. And he's not like a eunuch, but he's not like this, you know, womanizer either, which is, you know, he's a grown-up. Like he's a grown-up who has what seems to be like a grown-up sex life. Yeah. You know, which is cool.
Yeah. And we also get a cheeky reference to Kirk with Sam Kirk. We're gonna get to learn more about him and his mustache.
I love that tease. I love the mustache. I love that they have him have a mustache. I love the tease of, you know, oh, and also we're going to pick up Lieutenant Kirk. And they drop that a couple times in the episode. And then they're like, oh, Lieutenant Kirk is on the turbo lift on the way to the bridge. And of course, when he gets there, it's his brother. It's not Jim Kirk. It's Sam Kirk.
Right. And you're going to get murdered by space pancakes later on. It's fine.
And all they needed was for Pike to like, you know, say, welcome to the Enterprise, Lieutenant Kirk. And then like turn to the camera and go, gotcha.
Yeah.
You thought it was the other guy. Nope, not yet. It's the other. It's his brother. Did we get you?
My other favorite little joke. This one was a little more subtle. But I loved when they're going up. When Pike's about to first enter the bridge. And he's talking about like, oh, I thought you were going to be my new number one. And he's just like, yeah, I was a little bit. And Spock's like, no. I figured I'd stay science officer. It's like, oh, I'm a little bit uncomfortable having a new. And then he says number one, referring to La'an being his new number one for this bit. And it's a cheeky little reference to back in the pilot of The Cage, where he says like, I've always felt uncomfortable with a woman on the bridge or whatever, when he like refers to number one. I'm like, oh, that's a nice little like I see what you did there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I thought it was, like I said, I was very happy with it. And I like that you see that Pike is putting on a brave face in front of the crew, even though like, because it's obvious that seeing his fate is really bothering him. But you know, when he's in captain mode, like he's not, you know, he's not mopey. He's not grim. There's that one line on the shuttlecraft when he kind of, you know, when the pilot says, oh, brand new coat of paint, spiffed it up. That she cleans up real nice, you know, and Pike's like, if only it were that easy. And, and she's like, what was that, Captain? And he's like, nothing. You know,
my favorite bit would like that kind of alludes to that, where it's just like he gives like little speech before they go off on their mission. He's like, and no one's dying today. And I'm just like listening to the crew's like, wait, that was an option?
Yes, not today. Inevitably someday, tomorrow. But not today. No, like, it will not be today. We will not meet our fate on this day. Everybody got that? You know?
Okay, Pike.
Cool. Is the captain okay? But you know, he seems
red shirt today.
But yeah, he seems, you know, he's not like depressed and, you know, angsty. You can tell that it bothers him and that there's something sort of eating him up inside. But when he's on the bridge and on duty, and even when he talks to Spock in his quarters, like, you know, he's making the best of it, or trying to. He's trying to get on with things. You know, I've got a job to do. I'm in
Yeah.
command of the ship, so let's do this. You
Mhm.
know, and I feel like that's a really, you know, it's so much more interesting than just having it be like, you know, and he's just grim and angry all the time, and you know, it's like, no, man, that's
Mhm.
not how people are. He's got some shit that he needs to do. He needs to be able to
Mhm.
put it aside and get on with it. And we know it's still there. It's not like people are going to be like, Captain Pike made a joke. I thought he was upset about the beep chair thing. Like, no, he both like
Yeah.
he's, you know,
People
like
can
these
be multifaceted. It's
people
not like
can be
we're
different
fixated.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's not, I thought he was depressed. Yeah. Cause I guess depressed people are just always sad all
Like,
the
yeah,
time
like,
and
mhm.
never,
It's
never make a joke, never smile.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. No,
So
I
yeah.
agree. Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I think I hit everything that I want to say. Like this is a strong pilot. And
Yeah.
having seen the next 2 episodes, I will say like I'm pleased with where it's been going so far. So
The advanced reviews that I have read, because yeah, I guess they released the first 5 to critics
to
ahead of
critics,
time,
yeah.
and the advanced word that I've read has all been really positive. You
Mm,
know, saying that it's a really strong show. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of it.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so that I like they could just and it's like I said in my review, it just shows how much the value of as a writer or a storyteller at any level, whether you're a producer, an actor, whatever, knowing how to get out of your own way
Mm,
and not make things more complicated than they need to be. You know,
mm-hmm.
because I feel like that was a big issue with season 2 of Picard. It's been an issue occasionally at different levels with Discovery, although not
Yeah.
nearly to that extent. Um, you know, like sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you don't have to, you know, say, okay, this whole season's gonna be one big story. You know, like there's nothing wrong with that if you know how to do that and you have a story that will bear that kind of telling. But if you have a story that is just the perfect, you know, 1 hour sci-fi adventure story, then
Mm-hmm.
just do that and do it the best way you can. And,
Yeah.
you know, like and it seems like that's what this show is going to be. Just, you know, mostly episodic, self-contained stories from week to week and bring it on. Like
Yeah. I'm
I'm
here for
super
it.
excited about it. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very pumped for it. It's very nice. So
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoy it.
yeah.
Um, I didn't have a chance to make my shitty cheap shot at Lower Decks. I was going
Go
to
for it. I know
say,
you told me you
well,
had one prepped.
well, I had one loaded up, and I figure we'll wrap up the show here in a minute. But I had one loaded up. It was going to be um, about Admiral April and how some people complained about him, a black actor, being cast to play him when he was
Mm,
depicted as a white guy in Star Trek the animated series. And I was going to say that Star Trek the animated series was the second best Star Trek animated series, and
oh
then
boy.
and, and then you know you or someone in the chat would say, "Oh,
Oh, which one?
Lower Decks is the best," and then I could say, "I'll give you one more guess."
Yeah, yeah. See, that's not a
But
bad one.
yeah,
That's not bad.
I was pleased with it. But yeah, because I do really like Prodigy. It's a shame that they're taking so long to release the entire first season of Prodigy. I guess they want to space it out so they can get the live action stuff out without flooding the market with
I
Star Trek. But
I think the from what I can, my guess is it's more they're using it as filler because Paramount Plus wants to have a Star Trek every week, so they keep the Trekkies re-up in their
oh, that makes
subscriptions.
sense.
And
That
so
makes
it's
sense.
like, oh, we're still waiting on Lower Decks to finish up, so we'll just shove Prodigy in there for
Shove
5 weeks.
five
And then,
episodes of Prodigy out there, yeah.
yeah.
Because what they've released so far, I thought has been very good, and I'm
Mhm.
planning on. I want to do a video about it, but I want to wait until the first season is completely out.
That's what I'm doing weekly reviews of it, but I'm
Yeah,
waiting to do like a full review of it
yeah,
once it's all done.
yeah.
So
Because I do like that it. I mean, it is kind of doing a serialized story, but it's doing it, I think, much better than certainly than Picard, and in some ways better than Discovery has done it. Because it,
mhm.
I just think it's sort of an object lesson of if you want to do serialized storytelling, this show offers some lessons as to how you can do that without having the pacing problems or feeling like nothing's happening, or feeling like you have to, like, people have described it like it, butter scraped over too much bread is a phrase I see all the time.
Yeah.
It just stretching it out beyond all. In my most recent Picard review, I called it homeopathic storytelling, where you take, like, you take the active ingredient, which is the plot, and you dilute it so much that there's just nothing left of it by the time you get to the end, and Prodigy has, for the most part, really avoided that, and has done a good, has been a surprisingly solid show. It was the one of the new animated shows. Prodigy was the one that I kind of expected was going to not be for me, because I thought, well, it's for kids, and hopefully kids will like it, but I'm like in my 40s, I'm not really going to dig it, but I watched it and I thought, actually, this is pretty good.
Yeah, it was honestly the one that I was most like of all of them, even more than Lower Decks. And I still love Lower Decks. It's my favorite of again, probably all of Star Trek, debatably, definitely of the modern era. But I also like Prodigy, and it was the one I was most excited for, just because I've often seen that shows like Prodigy, like in franchises like this, are often the place where they can take the most risks, but also like have a certain underlying like competency is the wrong word, I think, but like they have a history and experience with it, because the writers come off of shows like Troll Hunters, which they did, and like having experience writing that. But if you look at like stuff like Star Wars, what Star Wars is doing now is they are building off of the stuff that was built into Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right.
Like those were the animated shows that like got to continue, like when people were frustrated with the current crop of Star Wars, like even the prequels and the sequel movies, people were frustrated those, but at the same time, Clone Wars and Rebels were going and telling strong stories that now the current live action stuff is drawing from directly. Like with Boba Fett having like referencing a lot of the characters and arcs from those shows. And so like I look at, like, if we look at what Prodigy and Lower Decks are doing, and I think of Prodigy especially, even though I love Lower Decks more, I think that's the show where like a lot of stuff's going to happen that 10 years down the line we'll probably see modern Star Trek shows pulling directly from.
Yeah, so. Which would be cool, because I mean, as long as it maintains the quality that it has so far, and like I say, it's been the great surprise for me of the current crop of shows, because it was the one, because like they did a He-Man animated show on Netflix that was specifically aimed at kids. It was like a Y7 related or rated show, and I didn't even make it through the first episode. Like I watched it and I was like, okay, this obviously isn't for me. Like it's not connecting with me at all. So I just didn't watch it, and I kind of figured Prodigy would be something similar. It's like it's a Nickelodeon show. It's for kids. Okay, good. I mean, that's great. I think that's great that they did that, but I didn't expect that I would feel, compelled to watch it. And I really liked it. So,
I think there's I think there's some shows that can be kid shows that are like that. And I agree. Like I watched that He-Man show too, and I was like, eh. And I think there's some kid shows that are like, they're really aimed at kids and not saying much more other than what kids will get out of them. But I think there's actually like a lot of really good stuff in kids media today, like Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts. She-Ra is great.
Oh, She-Ra's fantastic. Yeah,
She-Ra's
the
fantastic.
new She-Ra's fantastic. Yeah.
So I think like there's some really good like kids aimed at kids stuff that like I think is also just good storytelling that adults can enjoy as well. And I think Prodigy fits in there. So
yeah, I agree.
I agree. But also Lower Decks is the best.
Yeah. we will agree to disagree on that.
Yeah, we'll rant about that at some day. I love Lower Decks. But.
If you like references to things that happened before, Lower Decks is your show.
I'll leave it there. I have many things.
I know we can do this again. We'll do this. I'll tell you what. Sometime in the near future, we'll do a show on my channel or your channel, or it doesn't matter, and we'll just talk about Lower Decks, because that would be a ton of fun.
I would love that. Maybe when season 3 comes about,
after the new season. Yeah.
So
it'll give me,
or we could maybe we'll figure it out, but maybe after like Strange New Worlds ends and hopefully Lower Decks,
something like that. It'll give me a reason to watch the next season of Lower Decks, because I'm kind of on the fence about whether I'm even going to watch it. But if I know we're going to talk about it at some point, then all right, I better watch it. I guess I'm not going to like it.
It's too woke, dang it. No.
It's too woke. Why? I don't even want to see animated black women. That's too much for me. The cartoons need to be white too, damn it. So
you know, those people
anyway, yeah, people
anyway,
like, welcome to Star Trek, everybody.
yeah, diversity. What a shocker.
We're like, yeah, like even after 50 years, people can come in and go, what's with all the black people? What's with all the women? Why aren't there more white men in this? Like, okay, I guess you haven't been paying attention to any of this.
We'll keep telling the lesson over and over again until you do.
Yeah, and some of you are never going to get it, but whatever, that's okay. Well, anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and thanks to everybody for sticking with us, even though there was that little interruption with my computer taking a shit, but I got it back running at least long enough to finish the show. So thanks for being patient with us, and thanks everybody for watching and for hanging out in the chat. And Jessie, as always, great pleasure. We have to do this again sometime soon.
Most definitely, all the time. So
absolutely,
anytime. You are awesome and wonderful. So
and so are you. You're one of my favorite fellow YouTubers. So
same to you. You're my second favorite fellow YouTuber.
Yes. I love it. All right. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.